Hi, Dr. Kelli here. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome back if you're returning. In this video, I'm talking with Mary Locke, and we just had a great conversation about all things really optimal health. So Mary is a nurse practitioner. She also offers holistic coaching, health coaching, and she's a Reiki healer. So we talk about the things that have been personally healing to her. We talk a little bit about our work, food, food sensitivities, all kinds of things. So hopefully you will like this video. And if you do like it, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Happy healing. There we go.
All
Hello.
right.
Hello,
Hello.
Mary Locke. It's so good to see you.
Good to
And
see you.
yeah. So you're a nurse practitioner in a
Mhm.
family practice. So tell me a little bit about your practice.
Yeah, so currently I work for asthma, allergy, and immunology clinic. So I started off doing like the walk-in clinic. I
Mhm.
worked for a minute clinic for when I first started for about 5 years.
Mhm.
And I also did some internal medicine along the way. So it's just been since the start of 2020 that I've been working for the specialized allergy clinic, which has been a nice change. Mhm.
Yeah. But you also practice Reiki.
Yes, I practice Reiki and have started holistic coaching and looking into provide some educational classes as well, starting up here soon. So expanding
That's
what I'm
exciting.
doing and offering. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you get to practice? Do you get to use your Reiki officially very much or?
I do a little bit. I don't have too much space right now because I'm working on building some other stuff, but certainly it's really nice with the kids when they're not feeling well, or just for it's nice as like a self-soothing option too, for myself. So and then I do it for family and for some people on occasion. I have some
Yeah.
clients, yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a nice practice. So I was
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I get into like kind of a worry mom mode and
Mhm.
sometimes just sort of forget about the energy and just sending him some good energy, good Reiki.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. So yeah, I'll have to do that when we get off. I'll go into that kind of mode. Yeah, so Reiki is really just giving energy. There's nothing, you're not manipulating anything, just giving energy,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Just yeah, being that conduit and then, providing the space. So and then I always like to bring in my guides and imagining like a sacred space for it to occur. So some imagery I like as well. But yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, you just have to show up and be there and, use the symbols and, it's and with my kids when I have my 6-year-old, he'll cuddle up with me still, so that's really nice because I'll just cuddle him and put my hands on him, and I don't really have to think about anything, and I can feel my hands heating up.
Mhm.
So, it's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I used to, when my kids were little, I used to do a particular kind of energy work where it's just light touch. And I would usually just put my hands on their feet and it would help one of them sleep. So he would say, do that thing that helps me sleep. But I was just grounding and clearing. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there might be some steps that would come up or some vision of something and I would just help clear it. So ground and
Mm-hmm.
clear, ground and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty fascinating.
it really is. And it's interesting sometimes when I can feel the energy of when you start to do it a little bit more, you can feel the different energies of people. And to
Mm-hmm.
see that I couldn't believe I went to my teacher and said, are we all that magnificent? Like, are we all walking around with no clue of how bright? And she was like, oh, yeah. because when you see it, you're like, oh, I mean, it's just unbelievable how the energy
Mhm.
is different in different people. Like sometimes it's a little more um like almost grounding, just different. Sometimes it's really big.
Like the qualities, yes.
Yeah.
So like with my one of my sons, he definitely has more of like an earthy, like
Yes.
fiery energy. And
Yeah.
the other one has more of like an airy, like
Very. Yeah.
watery energy. So it's really interesting how, yeah, you can sense it. It can feel it. And I've sent like I feel it within my body is like the
Mhm.
main thing. And then I occasionally get visuals and then, we'll
Mhm.
have a little inner knowing about things as well.
Exactly.
So that kind of combination.
Exactly.
But it
Yeah.
is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just how, you connect on that soul level. And then, seeing
Mhm.
kind of how we've disrupted or kept ourselves from it in a certain way or, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I know I wanted us to talk about food because I thought that would be a fun conversation because I've seen
Mm-hmm.
some of what you think and what I think seem to be pretty similar about like just what might be helpful to people around food, but also just kind of what you see that's actually helpful in your work, little changes that people might be able to make because um, often the hurdle is getting people to actually do something different is
Mm-hmm.
what I found.
Right, because some people will be like, "Well, I eat healthy." So some people are totally closed off to it, and like,
Yeah.
what I'm doing now, I mean, I'm in a conventional practice, but I get to talk about food and
Mm-hmm.
stress and breath work often with the area that I'm in. So it's nice to be able to add that in, but some people aren't open to receiving that. So along the way, when I started off, I was much more gung ho, like, I'm going to give you this information. And I found that it was, not always a therapeutic approach, like, forcing
Mm-hmm.
that. So discerning, like, I want
Yeah.
to have it be a healing
Mm-hmm.
space for people. And if they're really closed off to it, then, giving too much information really isn't helpful. So kind of figuring that out too.
Yes. And I mean, so my background's in clinical mental health, and it's the same like meeting clients where they are, whatever
Mhm.
practice you're in. If they come in and they haven't asked for something and they seem closed off to nutrition, I mean, the reason I switched to become a nutritional therapist because I thought I would just be a holistic psychotherapist, but people would come and they didn't want to talk about food.
Right.
And that's my favorite thing to help people with. So I had to kind of shift what I was telling people I was doing. So now people come for that information,
Right.
but you still have to meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think sometimes is really challenging
Mm-hmm.
as a practitioner.
Right. So I like to draw, I mean, I like to just kind of drop little hints and have basic things like if they're open to hearing more detailed stuff, we can kind of go over what their foods are and kind of a starting space. So it just, I think it depends on what their diet is. I mean, you can obviously see if they're drinking Cokes and having highly processed foods, and it's kind of like, okay, let's cut back on drinking the sodas
Sodas.
as a
Yeah.
first step and just go from there. Maybe just let's focus on that to start and see
Yeah.
how you feel. And so I've had some people come back and said, I, did what you said, Miss Mary. And were feeling better because of it. So, and then another point I like to make when just to like, just focus to start on focusing on eating real foods. That, obviously it's a lot easier said than done
Yeah.
because, our society isn't set up to eat real food. There's a lot of processed, prepackaged foods. So it takes some planning and forethought to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, I don't, we don't always do that in my home, but, the other aspect of it too is like, I've experienced for myself being hyper focused on the foods and then that not being great
Helpful.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when you get so strict, like, oh my gosh, you can't eat that because it has, some flavoring or whatever, and
Mhm.
just fixating on that, or if it's not organic meat or this or that, then it's
Mhm.
like poison. You're eating poison.
I know.
So,
And then it freaks out. Yeah. Because
yes,
I
so it's
really
fine.
do think
I
that
mean,
what
I've come a
we,
long way from that, but yeah.
right, what we believe really is powerful. And so, not that I think you can eat a bunch of cookies and drink Coke and think it's good for you and it
Right.
be good for you. But at the same time, I do think that belief is powerful. And
Hmm.
I am 100% like just try to get more real food in people. And it sounds like you also kind of level up. So if we can make a small step to, reduce, now some of my clients and I'm the same way. Like there's certain things I can't reduce. I have to abstain. I just will not, I don't moderate certain things well. And
Hmm.
some people that are moderators, I think it's easy for them to just cut back on something and say, oh my gosh, I feel a lot better. Other people are going to have to cut it out completely. But if you just level up, like if you take your favorite things and we just find a healthier version of whatever that thing is, like the sodas, sometimes my clients will do Zevias for a little while, or we just try to
Hmm.
get them off of the sugary, like just get them off sugar and seed oils is a big thing.
Right.
Like it's just,
Yes.
yeah,
And then talking about too, if I mean, I see people with a lot of inflammatory stuff. So,
right.
um,
Yes.
beyond the high sugar and processed foods, a lot of times people have issues with gluten and dairy. If they remove those, then some people can notice
Mhm.
differences. But some people, can eat those foods and not have issues. So it's pretty individualized. So I
Yes.
always say, it is a trial and error. It's a personal journey.
Yes.
You have to try things on and see if it makes a difference. And so,
Right.
tuning into that body awareness, how does it feel? And so we do a lot of testing for food allergies, but we do not test for the like food sensitivity
Sensitivities.
stuff.
Yeah.
So we talk about it because you can do better with eliminating these foods, but with the food sensitivity, it is more of a delayed reaction. So you do have to go a period of time with eliminating it, and then so usually I say 3 weeks just because that's at least a little easier than like than 3 months.
Right.
But the longer you can eliminate it, probably the better, and then reintroduce it and give it like 4 to 5 days before you introduce another food if you're doing multiple foods at once, or if you can only see if just eliminating the gluten first and see how
Mm-hmm.
you do with that, and then reintroducing it, because sometimes these elimination diets are ridiculous, like so restrictive. In the beginning of last year, I was this year, I trialed the eliminating gluten and dairy, and it was I struggled with that. And I found that I do okay with dairy and
Mm-hmm.
gluten in small doses, so it was, not an issue, but I really like certain cheeses and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'll have a lot of clients they'll say, well, I tried that once. I tried that a couple years ago. Or I tried getting rid of gluten. It didn't make any difference. And it's like, okay, well, what was the try? Like, tell me a little bit
Right.
more about, for a week and what I found is it's just hard. It's hard to completely eliminate it when you're not used to that. And sometimes I'll have a celiac client that's still eating gluten. It's like, okay, we've got to get you off the
Yeah,
gluten.
strict avoidance with that. Yeah.
Strict avoidance with that. So it's not even like trial and error, but they really struggle to get off of it. And I understand that. I mean, I know when I went gluten free years and years ago, I was really kind of sad about it, actually. I felt sorry for myself and for a while until I really started feeling better. And I think it took me a full year to really get off of it, to feel good about being off of it, and to quit reintroducing it in small
Mhm.
doses because I wouldn't go long enough without having a little bit, So it took me a while to go
Mhm.
completely off of it and to realize how much better I feel when I
Mhm.
just do not have any gluten. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
tough.
It is. Yeah. Um, yeah. So you do the meat, what is it? The
Carnivore,
carnivore diet.
mostly, yeah.
Yes.
But I'm really into trial and error too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much somebody who likes to try things, see how it works. It may not work now, but it could work later. But I've been working on healing my body and my gut health for years. So I've
Mm-hmm.
been trying different things. And what I've found is that I feel like the science on sensitivity, food sensitivity testing just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to be there. But I have clients that will do some of the testing for food sensitivities and they find it helpful. So at least it's somewhere to start
Right.
with where to go. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And then sometimes I think if you have like if you do it and everything's positive, then it may just be you might be hyper inflamed and it may not necessarily be, accurate.
Right.
So I think if it helps pinpoint certain things to eliminate, to focus what to eliminate, it can be helpful. If it's not way restrictive, because the risk is if you become overly restrictive, then you can become nutrient deficient. So you have to be cautious with that. And one of the things I like about the carnivore diet is that it does give you a focus, though. It's not just focus, you're not just like eliminating, you're like focusing on what you can eat.
Yes.
So I think that's helpful. So with
Yeah.
the elimination stuff, it's just like that can like that when you think about the energy of that is like it feels restrictive and
Yeah.
feels like you don't get to have this. So I think it's helpful when you get to focus on,
What
what
you do
to
have.
eat. Yeah.
Yes, I can agree 100% with that because I remember years and years ago, I was trying, I can't remember what it was like macro something diet. Anyway, it was very
Hmm.
restricted, but I would almost get panicky when you feel like, what can I eat? Like when it's just,
Yeah.
you've got choices. But when I would get hungry, which I think was probably a mitochondrial issue, that
Hmm.
I couldn't go for long enough, I would get hangry. And then I would also get a little panicky about what to eat. And I don't have any of that anymore, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I think anything, I just don't think being too restrictive is helpful. And but I have had more healing than I could have ever imagined on carnivore. And I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've done like different diets like my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't until like I always felt like it was hard though. It was always like I had this 5 pounds that I had to lose and I couldn't figure
Mm-hmm.
it out. And then it wasn't until I had my firstborn and was like getting the baby weight off. And it just felt easier. I think it was because I was so focused on caring for him that I was less focused on myself that it
Mm-hmm.
became easier to lose the weight. I know that's usually the reverse for a lot of people. And it wasn't the same for my second one. Like I felt like I had to be more active with trying to lose the weight. Because sometimes you can get more stress and your sleep gets disrupted. But for me, it was like some part of it was stabilizing for me and then like less focus on myself, more focusing on someone else. I had less time to like be so hyper focused on what I was eating and how like, oh, I don't want to eat that because I'm gonna, gain weight or whatever. Or so that was, I feel like that has been a big thing is like when I get too hyper focused. So something that I don't have to think so much about is healthy,
Mm-hmm.
is helpful for me. And then with my second one, I trialed the keto diet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like another aha moment for me because, I grew up thinking calorie restriction, fat is evil.
Right.
Like,
Like we all did.
you
Yeah.
don't do that. And
Yeah.
it was just like, oh my gosh, I felt so much better. And like, I remember having like going through my menstrual cycle and I didn't even realize that I was going to have it because I didn't have any of the hormonal fluctuations or some like cramping at all. So it was just like it was pretty amazing that that I really did benefit from that increased fat.
Yes.
And that was another moment where it was like, oh, but it did get to a point where I felt like that was a little bit too restrictive for me and it was
Mm-hmm.
messing with my immune system. So I do more of like a low carb and balanced kind of diet.
Yeah,
And they,
mostly whole real food.
yes.
Yeah, I think the fat, I thought I was eating enough fat too. And then I worked with a practitioner, Dr. Bright. She wrote Good Fat is Good for Women in Menopause. And so she has lots of articles and information about good fat is good for everybody, particularly
Mhm.
teenagers and because we have to have the fat to make our hormones. And she's
Yeah,
like,
it's
we're
a
all a mess with our hormones because we don't eat enough fat because we're afraid of it. And I found that even people that don't have restrictive eating background or no eating disorders, but we just are afraid of fat. And so it's kind of challenging for people to go, if I eat this much fat, are you sure I'm not going to gain weight? I'm like, it's not, fat doesn't make us gain the weight. It's the sugar
sugar. Yeah.
that makes us gain the weight. So if they can kind of find that, I like for people to play with their carbohydrate ratios just to see like what does feel good in your body,
Hmm.
what, and sometimes you can get away with a packaged thing that I would say is a horrible, like
Hmm.
some processed stuff, but for some reason, like a protein bar or something, and they really
Hmm.
works for people. And so I've really opened my mind to how people get their food and
Hmm.
eat as much real food as possible and to increase the fat and decrease the carbs. Because if you increase the fat and you leave your carbs high, people do tend to gain weight. That
Yes.
and
For
that then
sure.
they're upset.
Not a
So
great combination. Yeah.
not no. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah. And then the role of stress, chronic stress is like can really throw everything off too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so learning about that, I mean, that's what for me, and like a lot of my healing stuff has been
Mm-hmm.
navigating through, getting that regulated, that and accessing more of that parasympathetic, that healing um,
Mm-hmm.
part to kind of, get over some of that chronic stress state. And that can
Yes.
affect how you digest food and
Yes. Yeah.
all that.
Yes. Because parasympathetic state is our rest and digest. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so many people, that's something simple I think people can do is just to start paying attention to, getting into a parasympathetic state before you eat. So you're not, rushing and eating.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned too, like when you're charting, like and eating
Yeah.
nuts, like even if you're eating something healthy or something that works in your body, to just pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to the state that you're in
Yeah.
and just doing some deep breathing and just slowing down a little bit
Mm-hmm.
helps people. And they can't believe that it's going to be that simple to help their digestion, but it actually really does, just to
Mm-hmm.
slow down and to get more in the parasympathetic state. Uh, Is there anything else that's been really helpful to you in kind of reducing your stress or figuring out how to manage stress?
Yeah, well, certainly the energy work has been helpful.
Mhm.
And with the energy work, kind of made me do more of a deep dive when I had my first Reiki session. I thought it was amazing, but I couldn't quite understand, okay, if we have this ability, we all have the potential to have access to this life force energy, this, healing energy. Why is it just to the people who have been attuned? Like I couldn't quite get my mind around that. And
Yeah.
it still is kind of mind boggling that it's just these symbols, these ancient, like sacred symbols that kind of
Mhm.
release this, you know, is this attunement. So those who have those symbols done, that they are able to access that life force energy to, have other people heal from it.
Yes.
So, but it really kind of stimulates the other person's stuff too. So it was just like, there's got to be a way that I can figure this out without having to get Reiki certified. So after I had my first one, I did kind of a deep, I found, it was Bradley Nelson. It was called the book, The Emotion Code, or
Mm-hmm.
The Emotion Code, I think it's called.
Uh-huh.
And so it's all about releasing these stored emotions within the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for almost a year. And this was like, so you kind of get into your body's like yes or no. There's like a sway
Mm-hmm.
method, and then
Yes.
there's the There's this
The
one, which I never
pendulum.
figured out how to
Uh-huh.
do, or the pendulum,
Uh-huh.
the muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some, that's not always super accurate either.
Yeah.
There's some, but, and you have this magnet thing. And once you figure out like, what is the emotion? Where is it trapped? And then like, am I ready to release it? Then you use this particular type of magnet, and it goes along that center, and you roll it down. You can do it yourself. And it opens things up to like release this trapped stored emotion.
Right.
So for
Cool.
me, I really noticed like this release that I was able to have done. And so it's a little bit different than Reiki. Reiki kind of gets more to the point and has its own intelligence to it, but it's the same kind of thing. It's,
Mm-hmm.
working on that. But for me, realizing, really focusing on releasing some of this stored emotion, which isn't widely talked about,
Right.
that was like a huge shift for me. And that when I would when I had a challenging moment, it felt way less intense and way easier to manage, easier to stay in my body and to like breathe through it and experience it without feeling like I didn't have control, or I wanted to divert my attention to, you know, um, distract
Anything.
myself from the pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful
Yeah.
with stabilizing my nervous system. And so then when hard things came up, I was able to move through it and process it a little bit better. But I mean, with our modern society, I mean, you have to always be doing something like that, because you're going to build up this stuff. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
not always appropriate to like boo-hoo when you have a challenging moment. As an
Right.
adult, you do have to kind of push it down, but to give yourself time to release that and express that
Mm-hmm.
is helpful. So it
Yeah.
doesn't come up.
100% agree. Yeah. And there are all different kinds of tools. That's a cool too. I mean, and that magnet, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I've done some tapping, like the emotional freedom
Mhm.
tapping, but even, that's, you can sit in your car and be tapping on yourself and doing that. But even that
Mhm.
seems odd to be doing
Mhm.
that all the time. And I think when I started really practicing like mindfulness based stress reduction, I took a course in that and we had to practice some mindfulness stuff every day and sit in meditation and even like brushing your teeth or something you do every single day.
Mhm.
Hopefully people brush their teeth every day, maybe not,
Yeah.
but it's like something that you do every day to do it mindfully. And so I was practicing that and I was practicing some EFT and things that would normally really upset me. Like I turned down a one way in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was
Mhm.
like going the wrong way. And
Yeah.
I didn't freak out. I was like, oh, this is not good. And I just kind of pulled up on the curb until enough people got out of the way for me to turn. And my husband even said, like, I can't believe you handled that like you did. I mean, just things
Uh-huh.
you can respond differently when you're
Mhm.
practicing these things. And when you practice when you don't necessarily need it, I don't know how else
Mhm.
to say that, but you keep practicing even when you feel good, then it makes it
Mhm.
easier when challenging things come up and you
Yes.
can say, okay, like your nervous system doesn't immediately have a reaction.
Mhm. Yes, I think that's what I've gotten to a place where I've done it like because I wasn't feeling good, like each day wasn't feeling good, so I would consistently do it or do the guided a lot of the guided meditations were helpful for me too, with
Me too.
breathing techniques.
Yes.
So I was doing those, and they're like maybe 15 minutes or something. So I do it in the
Mm-hmm.
morning and at night, and like religiously for a long time. And then you do get to a point where it's like you feel better and it's more sustainable. But so that's when it can be tricky to remind yourself to, yeah, keep up
Keep
the
doing it.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard when you feel like crap to get yourself to do things. But then as you start to feel better, it's hard to get yourself to continue because you're
Yeah.
feeling better.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think keeping up the practice, and you're right. I found that when I was consistent, like whatever it is, if I find a new breathing technique that I like, it doesn't take long. I like 478. That's my favorite breathing technique. But if I find something I want to practice, really short, really quick, but
Hmm.
just doing it religiously has been the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not taking so many breaks when
Yes.
you're feeling good. Yeah. Is there any particular breath work that you like?
I mean, I really like focus on the nasal breathing, that count 6 seconds in through the nose and the abdominal breathing and then out through the nose. But yeah, I like some of the guided meditation ones too is nice because it does kind of get everything nice and relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Which guy? I use Insight Timer, just the free app. I got the Insight Timer because when I was in that mindfulness based stress reduction class for therapists, we had to, well, we didn't, well, we did our practice. And I kept finding that I would keep looking at the clock. Like, has it been 15 minutes yet? And so I got the timer because you can have a chime or like a nice little bell or whatever, and you can set the time that you want. And it was nice, but it has thousands of free meditations on it. So it's a good one.
Yeah, so I used there's Energy for Success. It's a GI doctor who created this program. And so I did his for a little while.
Yeah.
So I mean, then I like to change it up. I liked there's the Shaman Durek was one of them that so like the shamanic journeys. But that was, I mean, doing those when I was doing like the breath work and the guided imagery, for a little while, I was just laying down on my back and doing this breath work, and I noticed like this energy surge like come up and like felt like it was going like out my head. And I was like, what the heck is this? And but it felt like really expansive and open, and like, and then, it lasted for a few seconds and then kind of reverted back to where I was. It felt like, oh, if I could just kind of maybe keep that open, that will like that energy, like there's something to that. Like it felt almost orgasmic, and it's like I wasn't having any kind of sexual thoughts or anything of that nature, and it just kind of rooted on up. And so at the time I wasn't aware of what it was, but I was like fascinated, like what's like, how did we not know that you can access this? Like what's going on? Like what is this? And I had a Reiki session, and she's like, it feels like you have like Kundalini energy coming up. And I was like, Kundalini, what? I was like, so that was my first mention of that Kundalini energy. So that was pretty fascinating about how, at the base, we have this, they sometimes describe it as the serpent, and how it kind of can flow up. And so when you see that health symbol with is it a sword and then the two serpents, that is kind of the image that Kundalini energy is, that has been the kind of symbol for health. And like with our healthcare, which has kind of gone a long way from that, but with allowing that natural energy source to flow up. But it's pretty, I mean, I still don't quite understand it, but it's pretty interesting. I guess when you allow all those channels to open, you allow it to flow through you, but it's not so much sustainable. I mean, it kind of reverts back to what your baseline is. So I'm like, it's interesting though.
It is interesting. And I think, the times that I've had that expansiveness, and you kind of would like to stay there because it really is a great feeling. But it also is a little bit disorienting. And so I just wonder, I have no idea, if we come back to our normal state, whatever that is, because we have to keep going with life. And I'm just not sure that we would care to put on our pants and go to work and do all the things we have to do.
That's true.
I'm sure that there are, some meditative gurus and maybe some Buddhist monks that are kind of in that space all the time. But to me, it was so expansive that I think I would get a little lost in there, and I would have a harder time doing the daily things that we have to do.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. And it's hard to even put into words some of the experiences. during either a meditation or a healing that something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like you, I was like, wait a minute, we're walking around with the ability to have access to this.
Uh-huh.
And we just act like we don't know, or a lot of people don't know.
Right. And what, let's talk about this more, and like, what's going on here? And I think part of it is it does help kind of release some stuff and allow energy to flow, and it helps kind of, a healing process to occur. I think it does, but I mean, I don't think it's not everything though. It's not like obviously it's just one part of it, but,
right. But a big part of it, I think. And I think just the more that we could tap in to that space within us, I feel like it's within all of us.
Yes.
To be able to do that. I think one of the arguments, I'm just thinking about a comment that I had from a former student that was like, what if, this is all nice and well for people who have the time and the resources. It doesn't take a lot of resources.
Yeah, you don't have to have money to really do it.
You don't have to have money, but maybe the access to, I don't know what that would be like, to let yourself do it, to believe you deserve it, to believe that you have it in you, to make a little space for it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So for me, it was all about like being able to relax enough to get out of my own way for it to flow up.
Right.
And then when I've had other experiences similar, but like very expansive, but not so like the Kundalini thing, but very like open and like, it is disorienting. I mean, I think it's because it's like it's always there, and like somehow you've removed yourself from it, and like it's like this unconditional love and abundance, like this ever-present force that's within, and when you can feel it like just pulsating within your body, is like kind of heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching, because it's like so sad that it's like always been there and you just have kept yourself from it. So it's like one of these amazing experiences, but then it's just like, yeah, we play so small and are able to forget so easily, and like, victimize ourselves, and do all these isolate and do all these other things that
that cut us off. And even when we cut it off or get cut off, or however that works, because I do think that there's some traumatic experiences in our lives that just keep us cut off. And those things do happen, but I really do believe that we have to believe that we're worthy of that experience.
Right.
And that's really tricky for a lot of us. Everybody's worthy. Like, you don't have to earn anything or do anything to have access.
Yeah. But it is like our conditioning it's like our shame filled, society, and it goes in deep, and it's always, obviously it's always there with the images that we get from marketing and movies and
family, and
for sure,
people telling us what we can and can't do and what we're worthy of. It comes from a lot of places, but you got pretty emotional there, like I appreciate that you were open enough to get emotional.
Well, I mean, it is like, just to, like, I know some people will have those experiences and then it's like everything's changed after that, which it's more of like been a gradual integration process for me. It's like you get to experience that and it's like, okay, you kind of integrate it, but then you forget too. I mean, you have to go to work and grocery store and take care of the kids, and so it's easy to forget that we put so much attention on this other stuff, and But how to have a balance with both of them. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, because I really love this energy work and spiritual work and diving deep into that limitless part of ourselves. And then we also have our physical body, which is very limited. And so the dichotomy of both of those, like how do we kind of fit those together or harmonize the two of them so that we are in more of that balance and not so much of that, always that limited logical mind, and that we can kind of balance the two of them so that we can kind of go through life easier and, follow, listen and learn what is our heart's desires and being able to follow that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hear the heart and have more flow. I like the word harmony. Balance is great too, but I think you're right. I think it's about harmonizing and having more harmony, because we have these bodies. And I think that's why we do forget, is because we have these bodies.
Yeah.
And I think getting more in the body has actually been helpful. And when I was just thinking, the experiences I've had that have taken me like way out of myself, that have been very freeing or opening, or and doing some Kundalini yoga, and I had just some really cool experiences. And you're right, like it's this amazing, and you're like, we have this in us, and then somehow we kind of get back to the daily grind.
Or like how do we use it or integrate it?
Yeah, how, and I look at it as an integration too. Like it has to kind of all kind of come together. But also, like when I'm in that space, I'm like, who cares what we eat? Who cares? It's not even about, but when I'm in my body, I'm like, I don't feel good if I eat these things, and I feel better if I eat these things. And so I wrestle with that. Like, does it even matter? Like, we're here for such a short time.
Right.
And I think for some of us, it really matters. And I think there are some people, it doesn't seem to matter that much.
Yeah, I think it is like a spectrum and very individualized.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's a combination of a bunch of different things.
Yeah. Because I think my husband could probably eat tires and get some nutrition out of it.
Yeah.
Just like, not that he's super healthy, but I mean, like he's very hearty in that way. Whereas I feel like I'm super sensitive.
Right.
So if I walk in and there are toxins somewhere, I'm like the canary. I'll start breaking out in some hive. Like, can't breathe. I'm like, something's wrong with this place. And I'm that way with food too. I'm just super sensitive.
Yes. And that's why, I mean, for me, it's been helpful too to learn about how like certain mechanisms within our body and understanding those. And like that's why chronic stress has been, we have a certain amount of cortisol that is helpful throughout the day. We need it. It helps us focus. It has a certain anti-inflammatory component. It spikes in the morning and kind of decreases throughout the day. So it's lowest at, in the middle of the night. And then when we experience really stressful moments, either like on the road and about to get in a car accident, you can have these boosts.
Right.
And so that's normal to have like short periods of that stress where it starts with that perception of the threat. So it's all about really how you perceive the threat. And then it occurs in the hypothalamus, which is the base of the brain. And then that releases a hormone to the pituitary, and that releases hormones that activate the adrenals. Yeah, and then that activates the cortisol, the stress hormone, as is a surge of the hormones of that and the adrenaline. So that increases heart rate. And it also, cortisol will increase blood sugar so that it has more access. Your brain is able to absorb it a little bit quicker too. And then it also wants to send it to the large muscles. So, if you were to have to fight something off, that you'd have that surge of energy to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it shuts down these non-essential parts of ourselves. So, like digestion, reproductive, growth stuff. And then at the same time, there's this complex part within that cortisol effects within the brain
Mm-hmm.
that that controls like mood
Yeah.
and fear and motivation. So there's like that aspect too. So if you have it in little bursts, it can be good, but obviously that chronic stress is going to affect your whole body and how it functions. And when you have this elevated blood sugar for so long, a lot of times your insulin, that is the part that is the key to allow glucose into the cells so
Mm-hmm.
that the cells get what they need to be able to function.
Right.
You can't keep up with the demands of that high circulating glucose. So often, you can feel hungry
Mm-hmm.
because your cells are starving because they're not getting what they need because so you have more of it circulating through the blood, but not so much within the cells. And then you have this, so there is this relationship with this elevated cortisol and how you have that hunger drive and you may not necessarily, need to eat.
Right.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, and then it also shuts down that immune system. So it's this
Mm-hmm.
whole cascade that occurs. So
Right.
that's why that for me is such an important aspect to get into that, rest and digest. And like, why do we need to do this is because, and we do have control over it too. I mean, we are
Mm-hmm.
able to access that parasympathetic with breath work and guided imagery and Reiki. So all that stuff.
All the things. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny that you're talking about because I just ordered myself an adrenal stress test for at home because
Okay.
I want to see where my cortisol is. So it's just
Uh-huh.
the one where you spit and send it away, and it'll give you a chart because I just wanted to see. Um, I had it done a couple about a little over a year ago, and so
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to see where my cortisol is right now.
Yeah. So do you do it more, you just do it the once or you do it
No,
twice?
multiple times during the day.
Okay,
So you
yeah.
spit and multiple and you chart it all out or whatever. And then they give you,
Yeah.
yes,
That
because
is
I think,
interesting.
yeah, I just I didn't think that might be part of, but even when you get the results, you still have to do all the things to reduce the stress. So it can give you
Right.
some information, which is kind of helpful because I sometimes like data. But
For sure. It can be helpful. Yeah.
but truthfully, I just need to do the things that help me reduce my stress. And
Right.
yeah. And for me, I'm really into earthing these days. So I'm outside a lot. I'm walking
Mm-hmm.
around barefoot, trying to help neutralize, get those free electrons from the earth.
Yeah.
So that's my new thing.
Yeah. I know. I see your posts. I love that how you see the sunrise every morning.
Yeah.
You motivated me to think about doing it, which is the first step, right?
First step. Yeah. It's like, could I even get
So
my life to, yeah.
yeah, but that is helpful, and that's helpful with regulating your hormones too, is
Yes.
getting that daylight. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when I had little kids and I was also overweight, so I wasn't really wanting to be outside and certainly not in a bikini or
Mm-hmm.
getting much cut. And I just think I spent a lot of years without a lot of sun.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all super afraid of the sun anyway. We cover up and we put all our sunscreen on. And so now I'm just having to do that a little more responsibly, get outside and actually get my eyes and my skin to a little bit of light throughout the day. And it's been unbelievably helpful. And so my vitamin D is coming up slowly, but also just helping with all of hormone regulation. And that morning light, it's unbelievable how much that
Mm-hmm.
helps set super chiasmatic nucleus in the brain. That's like the master clock. And
Mm-hmm.
so early morning light will help sort of set the tone for the day
Mm-hmm.
to get us so that our body knows when to make things like cortisol and melatonin and
Mm-hmm.
when to make what. It helps orient us to the time and place and season that we're in.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then it's just like being outside is so much more expansive and
Mhm.
hearing the birds and the outside stuff can help kind of give you that sense of
Yeah,
spaciousness, and
help regulate the nervous
yeah,
system.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I think, anything that we can do to help our body orient to where we are, because when we're opening packages, I just think like no wonder all our bodies are confused. We're not outside, we're on electronic stuff all the time, indoors with artificial lights, and we open packages for what we call food. So our body is like, how's it going to get information about where we are in time and space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why we want to do real food, right?
Yes, for sure.
For the information. So I guess I was just looking at the time. I guess we need to wrap it up, but I wanted to see if there's anything else that you had on your heart or on your mind that you wanted to share, or anything that feels nourishing to you.
Well, I think just the more like when we're able to have those moments of connection, like that is that's kind of reminds us of that soul energy, whether that be just relaxing into our body and feeling it that way, or being outside and connecting with nature, or with this or something like that, that it is that's helpful as well.
I agree. Yeah. Anyway, we can feel connected. That can be helpful. Yeah. Well, I loved having I know, connected to our food, to the people, to earth, to even I think connected to the work that we do. I think if you can love the stuff, love what you do, or find things that are connecting in the work that we do, that can be helpful for people too.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I loved getting to talk to you. I appreciate you taking time. I still think that at some point we should probably do a live and talk about some of this stuff on a live. Yeah.
Yes. I would love to. Thank you for having me on and get to talk about all the stuff I love. So it's fun. I don't always get to do that, obviously.
Anytime, because this connecting is good for my soul. So it's fun for me. And I will link, so I'll put how people can get in touch with you. Do you have a website too? I can't remember.
I do.
Yeah. I want to make sure
it's Eclectic Vibrationz with a Z.
That's right. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Yeah. I'll make sure that I link all of those things so that people can find you.
Yes.
And we'll just keep in touch.
Yeah, sounds good.